What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Payne. Welcome to my first ever Final Fantasy 14 video, and man, it's taken me a very long time to do this, but I didn't want to do the game any injustice, and the reason why it's taking so long is because I love this game and I want to share it with you guys finally. So today I want to talk about what Final Fantasy 14 is, what to expect, what it offers you as a player, and why it is becoming easily one of the hottest games of 2021, and moving on with the brand new expansion ENDWALKER, probably going to be one of the hottest games in 2022. So buckle in, guys, let's get on this ride and let's talk all about Final Fantasy 14. Alright, to those new people who have never played an MMORPG, which stands for a massive multiplayer online role-playing game, it's like any other one out here. When you first get on your character screen, you will see your character that you have created, or you can create a brand new character. So let's go ahead and do that, guys, so I can show you what's available. So first off, you're going to have a couple races you can choose from and a gender. You have the human, you have the elf, Elysian, you have the Lalafell, which is pretty much a miniature little elf-looking dude. I don't even know what to call them. There is a backstory for all of them. There's cat people. You have the giants, of course, and then the Aura, which are like the half dragons, and then the Hrothgar, which are similar to the cat people, except they're a little more vicious because they look like lions. And then you have the Viera, which are the bunny people. Now the ENDWALKER expansion, the newest one coming out, will introduce a male version of this, but currently the Hrothgar are only male and the Viera are only female, so keep that in mind. Now you can look at different settings here. They can do a standing position where they're just standing still while you create them, or the unique where they do movements, and different backgrounds to kind of see how your character looks on the different platforms that is offered in Final Fantasy. The environments are always lush, and there are going to be a lot more than what you see here, so it's just a little bit aesthetic for you. And remember, you can choose a male or a female version. So let's go ahead and create a male. You can use the Midlander or the Highlander. As you can see, they are very different in stature and in size, and there's a backstory again. If you're into that RP stuff, you can read it and kind of decide from there outside of the looks. And then of course you have the customization page, which is you can do the height, the muscle tone, skin color, hairstyles, hair color, face, jaw. You can do pretty detailed characters, and it's pretty important, guys, because quite honestly, you can, for example, in the game, take off your helm and not show the display so you can see your face often. So if you really like your character's design, there's ways to actually remove certain armor that you're wearing in order to see the character you created. But as you can see here, the hairstyles can go from gender neutral to female to male, even if you are using a character who's a male. So there is no limitation here to what's available, and there are additional purchases you can do on the Mog Station for aesthetics, as well as in-game stuff like getting the Final Fantasy 15 Noctis hairstyle. So there are many different ways of getting additional things, and you can always change your look by buying the bottle, I think it's called the Potion of Fantasia, from the Mog Station, which is available to anybody if you want to change your race or your overall look as well too, so keep that in mind. But as you can see here, the customization is pretty good, actually. Like, the game is dated for graphics. It is I think it's 11-year-old game now, maybe even older, and I mean, like, it still looks pretty damn good, I'm gonna say. They could have added a lot more into the game in terms of aesthetics and features, but quite honestly, I think there's more than enough to make a character that you like. So as you can see here, I'm just kind of playing around with it here, and then you can go to voices and kind of see the different kind of voices you can choose from. There's manly voices, there's girly voices, there's neutral voices, there's rough voices, gruff voices, etc. Right? So you just go through this and kind of see what the voices sound like through different emotes, and you kind of choose what you want, and then that's what your character is going to sound like. Now your character, just a quick spoiler, I guess, not really a spoiler, but your character actually doesn't talk in game, but there is voice acting in the game, but your character actually doesn't speak. You'll hear the voices more in the moves that you pull off and such like that, right? And the emotes. Now you'll pick a birthday and then a goddess or a god who represents you, and then you're off on the way to go to pick a class. Now, a class or a job. A class is a basic starting class, which means like you get to choose a tank, a pugilist. So a tank is a gladiator, for example. A pugilist is a monk who will turn into a monk of hand-to-hand combat. A marauder is another tank who uses a double-handed axe. Lancer is someone who uses a spear, and the archers use bow and arrow, and then the disciples of magic are either healers or they're going to be casters. So classes will eventually become jobs, and once you're ready to go with the class you go pick a forename and a surname, and off you go. So I'm not going to create a character, but I will get into my character and show you guys what this is all about. So now let's talk about the different expansions. Welcome to Final Fantasy: A Realm Reborn, guys. So this is the game that was created by Yoshi P after the cataclysm of the OG Final Fantasy 14, and it'll be the base game. And then when you finish the base game, you'll get the first expansion called Heavensward. Now keep in mind, guys, these two are currently free trial up to level 60, up to 200 plus hours of content, so get in there and download that. If you do like the game enough, the second expansion is going to be called Stormblood, which introduced the samurai class and expanded the story to the epic proportions that it's in. And now the current expansion that we're on is called Shadowbringers, and I have to tell you guys, probably the best story I've ever been a part of in any role-playing game. And now to come in November is going to be the newest expansion, ENDWALKER, with brand new classes, Sage and Reaper, as well as many adjustments. The video is out on YouTube, so check that out right now. So the first thing, guys, when you do create your character, pick a class, you're going to be jumping in the main story quest. Now, main story quest is actually what drives Final Fantasy 14. Unlike most MMORPGs, where the story kind of is the backdrop and the gameplay and the rating is what matters most, Final Fantasy 14, as it should, has made the story the forefront of the focus in the game. Now you can see here there is a massive amount of storyline to go through. I actually don't want to spoil anything for you guys, but I just want to show you guys the amount of content that is available. Now this is the main story quest, and then you have side story quest as well as Beastman stories and stuff like that. So definitely get in there, start working on the main story quest, and make sure you focus on it and read it. Alright guys, the next thing I want to really show you guys here are classes. Now I want to only show you a few here because, again, I don't want to spoil it. Here's the Gunbreaker class. I want to just show you guys the kind of moves that are available. Here is a Bard, for example. So there is range classes, there's tanks, so the Gunbreaker was a tank. This is a ranged DPS and a support, being the Bard. And so you have a lot of different options to choose from, guys. There's melee, there's casters, we'll go over those as well too, but there are a various amount of different playstyles that you can get into in Final Fantasy 14, making the game never dull, as a matter of fact. Plus, the character that you use can always be any of these classes. You don't have to create multiple characters to play a different class. Your character can be every single class because he is the Warrior of Light. Being the Warrior of Light allows you to have different abilities and unlock different jobs. Now, jobs are different than classes. Classes are the base roles you'll play, but then as the classes advance, they'll open up jobs, and jobs are like Black Mage, Gunbreaker, Paladin, Warrior, etc. So again, I will show you guys the different types of jobs that are available to you and the classifications that they're in. But as you can see here, the moves look amazing and flashy. Alright guys, so here are the jobs. This is what I was talking about. So tanks are Paladins, Warriors, Dark Knights, and Gunbreakers. Melee DPS are Monks, Dragoons, Ninjas, and Samurais. Physical range DPS, Bard, Machinist, Dancer. Magical range DPS is Black Mage, Summoner, Blue Mage, and Red Mage. And then the healers are Astrologist, Scholar, and White Mage. If you look at my screen right now, you can see I'm transforming into different jobs. As I mentioned before, your character can become any job that's available in the game as long as you unlock it. So guys, jump in there, play whatever job you want to play. There is really no wrong playstyle, and every job has a place in the game. Alright guys, so the other part of the Final Fantasy experience here is going to be dungeons. Now, when you play the main story quest, you're going to unlock many different dungeons, and that actually pits you to fight against different bosses and enemies with a group of 4, including yourself. So there's usually a tank, a healer, and then 2 DPS. Now you can actually queue through the Duty Finder, which is a very convenient cross-realm platform, allowing you to play with other people around different servers, and then you guys just explore the dungeon, beating different bosses. And I'm telling you now, there are so many freaking dungeons, guys. There's almost like an obscene amount, to be quite honest. So as you can see here, there's some bad guys. Here's an example of an early boss in the game for this is actually a Realm Reborn. So you can see giant scorpions, and there are different designs. There's different mythological monsters. There's dragons, there's cyclopses, there's, you know, the typical Final Fantasy 14 primals, etc. So here's an example of a pirate, for example, boss, right? That's in the same one as the one with the scorpion. So there is I mean, an uncanny amount of bosses, guys, and different designs. So if you're into the Final Fantasy lore, and if you're into the Final Fantasy stories, this is going to be the love child of all Final Fantasies, because it does bring in a lot of enemies from classic Final Fantasy games as well as new Final Fantasy games. And if you're not, and you just like to just see, you know, explore mythological monsters or just unique designs or cool cool bosses, Final Fantasy has that for you as well too. So Final Fantasy 14 definitely steps up the game in terms of character design as well as boss design, and just overall the experience for dungeons are fun, and honestly they're all unique and they all have different gimmicks and different mechanics, so it's never a dull moment when you're playing this. So dungeons are a great part and a very important part of Final Fantasy 14, and the beauty is, guys, you don't have to play them all day long. You can do 1 or 2 dungeons a day, get your resources and get your you know, your rewards, and call it a day. Like that's the one thing about Final Fantasy that I've always loved. It's not a requirement to play all day long. If you want something bigger than just dungeons, there are things called trials. Now trials are going to be fighting against pretty epic and very, very familiar names such as Ifrit, Titan, Shiva, you know, Ultima Weapon, Ramo, you name it, like Leviathan. These are characters that, or these are summons or primals that have been in many Final Fantasy games, and it's no different in Final Fantasy 14, except they take it to a different level where you fight them on large scales, and there are different versions of them, guys. There's the regular versions, hard versions, and if you want to really challenge yourself, the extreme versions. Here's an example of a boss right now that is in Party Finder. This is the regular version of Suzaku, and this is one of the legendary 4 mythical monsters in the Stormblood expansion, and I just wanted to quickly show you guys some of the gameplay here. You know, this is me being a warrior right now, and as you can see here, this is an 8-man group, not a 4-man group, so the trials are a little bit larger in scale, bigger bosses, cooler effects, and a lot more difficult mechanics, so making it a lot more fun and challenging if you want to do that. And this is just the second phase of the mechanics. So I just want to show you guys a different mechanic. Here's like what we call DDR, Dance Dance Revolution, where there's arrows pointing and balls coming at you. You have to face the proper arrows at the right timing and collect those balls, or else they will empower the boss. And then this is the transformation of the boss from the Phoenix to the actual character that you're going to be fighting in the last phase. So I just wanted to quickly show you guys just different phases, different moves that are available, and just the scope of some of these bosses, right? So this is one boss, going from a Phoenix all the way to a dragon. If you're into this kind of myth, guys, there are a ton of them in the game. And not only that, but they feature bosses from other Final Fantasy games, like Emerald Weapon from Final Fantasy 7. So there are many different cameos from different games. There's always a cool experience to have in Final Fantasy 14. Alright guys, so you guys may have heard me use the term Duty Finder a few times. Now this is what I was talking about. This system here allows you to queue up and play with other players around different realms, and allows you to do different various things in the game, such as dungeons here, alliance raids, guild heists, normal raids, PvP, and then you can even go further and break it down per expansion in game and actually queue up for specific ones. And as you can see here, there's quite a bit to go through. There's guild heists, which are like little training sessions. There's actual trials, and this is what I was showing you guys earlier in the previous clip. And then if you go additional, there's trials for Shadowbringers. So there's a lot. Every expansion brings out new enemies and new trials, and as well as raids. So if you want to challenge yourself even further from trials, you can go into raids and do raids for every expansion. As you can see here, around Reborn, Heavensward, and Stormblood have their own. There's a ton of story behind every single one of them, so you're not missing out on, or sorry, you will be missing out if you don't actually try them out. And then Shadowbringers has its own. And then if you like to do the normal ones and want to challenge yourself even further, there are Savage ones as well as Ultimate ones, which are pretty much the top of the line rating material that's available. There's also mini games such as Gold Saucer and PvP. So if you're not into the whole RP part, you can always do a ton of PvP. And lastly, guys, the part I want to touch on that is something that's very unique in this game, and that is going to be things such as crafting and gathering, as well as things like housing. So if you don't care about the whole battle system and you know, running around killing bosses, you can always go ahead and do things such as crafting, which allows you to create armor, items. You can be an alchemist, you can be a weaver, you can be a blacksmith, and you can actually use these materials that you gather and create those items, or you can just be a gatherer and sell the materials on the auction house and go at house and buy yourself a massive house or an apartment building, which is honestly a lot of people what people consider end game in Final Fantasy 14. After you're done raiding and everything, when you have the downtime, a lot of people go ahead and work on this house. So this is actually the FC house. The FC is essentially your alliance or your guild. So I'm going to walk in here and kind of just show you guys. Somebody actually went in here, purchased all of this, or we did it as a group, and put this house together from scratch. They're like, this is an empty home, and somebody went ahead and bought this house for a ton of gil and put it all together for the FC, which is your alliance to join, come together and have fun. Now there are some crazy RPs. If you haven't watched any of the videos on housing, I suggest you do it. You can see some of the most immaculate homes, things that look way better than any house in real life, and just how cool it is and how people hang out. It's like a massive community to come together. There's nightclubs, there's like, you know, brothels and stuff. It's a wild time of Fantasy 14. So the sky's the limit. The imagination can run rampant here in this game. So this is some other features here. Now, if you don't want to just join your FC house, you can actually get lucky enough to perhaps purchase your own home. Right now there's a massive wait list and it is really expensive and difficult to do so, but it is end game, right? So this is something you want to strive for at the end to get yourself. I personally own a small little shack. It kind of reminds me of my condo back where I lived in Toronto. So I'm going to show you guys that real quick, but this is the massive home that the FC has, and you can see here there are other houses around the map, and you can actually go ahead and visit those homes. So I suggest you guys do that. Alright guys, lastly here I just wanted to show you my quick apartment. This is kind of the end of the video. I just want to say first off, thank you guys for watching. If you guys have not tried out Final Fantasy 14, I highly recommend you go out there, Google Final Fantasy 14 free trial. You can get into the Square Enix shop and actually download the Final Fantasy 14 A Realm Reborn, as well as the Heavensward expansion. As I mentioned before, that is 200 plus hours of content for you guys to play. There is no fee, there is no cost to get the game. It is a free trial and it will keep you entertained. If you like the game enough, then you can go ahead and purchase Stormblood as well as Shadowbringers. There is a complete edition you can purchase right now online, and then you can go ahead and pre-order Shadowbringers for November 23rd when that releases. There are a ton of streamers, guys, that have moved over to Final Fantasy 14. My personal favorite, Asmongold. I've been watching him religiously, even though I've played the game from beginning to end. I've been a legacy player. Watching a brand new player like himself play from scratch made me love the game even more. So thank you to those big streamers for doing this. It actually gave me the courage to go ahead and actually create my first Final Fantasy 14 video, which is ironic because you guys know how easy it is for me to do this for the most part. But this is a game that I love so much that I didn't want to do an injustice on my first video. So hopefully this helped you out. But you can see here you guys can design your own apartment. This is one of the cool features that I loved. I actually went and brought brand new flooring and I set up my apartment here. You know, so you can see here you can change the floors, the walls, the ceiling, lighting, etc., the interior. You know, this reminds me of the Toronto condo that I lived in, so it's kind of cool to be able to do that. But that's pretty much it, guys. Final Fantasy 14 in a nutshell. There's a lot more to offer, but I just wanted to talk to you guys about the things that I love about it: the music, the story, the community, the people, the gameplay, everything about Final Fantasy 14. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is Payne. We'll talk soon.